I'm Jolie Pataki. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Directors, and on behalf of the Board, I'd like to welcome you. President David Allman, Monty Itzkowitz is the Treasurer, Tibby Brooks is the Executive Director, Toby Emmer, Jeff Kisseloff, Robert Mirapole, and Miriam Moskowitz are other members of the Board who are very happy to welcome you as well. First off, I'd like to start the program by reading you a letter from our esteemed President, David Allman. If you were to ask yourself why you've come to this memorial meeting, among the answers might be that you have some uncertainty about the issues in the 6 decades-long Rosenberg-Sobel case. You may have come for enlightenment about the tragedy that unfolded when several idealistic individuals obtained and passed on to the Soviet Union classified military information during World War II. You may still be disturbed by the draconian death sentences. You may have come to show the sons of the Rosenbergs that they don't stand alone in their long search for the truth. Over the years, our presidents and Congresses and Supreme Court justices have, by new laws, presidential orders, and an authoritarian-minded Supreme Court, created the makings of a police state. The Constitution is now expressly banned from courts in which indictments for disloyalty or suspicion of terrorism are prosecuted. Prosecutors no longer have to prove defendants in such cases guilty. Defendants have to prove themselves innocent. How did we get this far from the imperfect democracy of the 1950s? If you're looking for a starting point for the 60-year assault on the Constitution, the Rosenberg-Sobel case is a good place to begin. On the surface, the prosecution and judge follow the required sequence of steps: the arrests of the defendants, their indictment and trial, the verdicts, sentences, and executions. The indictment charged the defendants with having conspired to spy for a wartime ally, the Soviet Union, during World War II, a charge for which there was circumstantial evidence for the guilt of Julius Rosenberg and Morton Sobel, but none at all the involvement of Ethel Rosenberg. But in the courtroom, the prosecution and the judge charged the defendants with treason on behalf of an enemy. This illegal switch required the prosecution to set a new high for the use of perjured testimony, forgery, invented events, illegal sentencing, and wrongful executions. Now fast forward. Today, in loyalty and national security cases, it is not necessary to arrest suspects at all. They may just be picked up for detention. The laws place no limits on the length of detention. A man or woman picked up today in a so-called loyalty and national security case may still be detained without trial on July 4th, 50 years from now. Moreover, that man or woman's family may never learn what happened to their father, mother, sister, or friend. Today, a man or woman defendant in a loyalty terrorism case may, by law, be denied the right to read his or her complete indictment. There are even cases in which judges may not be trusted with this information. How do you defend yourself against charges never described to you? How do you cross-examine government witnesses whose identity may not be revealed to you and the precise testimony against you never made known to you? How do the families of these men and women know whether the disappeared loved ones are alive or dead, sick or in good health, tortured or being treated humanely, if you can call secret detentions humane? For a really comprehensive picture of the state of justice in our country today, go to the internet, go to the websites of the Center for Constitutional Rights, the ACLU, and the websites of other civil rights organizations. Our committee to reopen the Rosenberg case believes it is possible to challenge the steps being taken to transform the United States into a police state. One big step would be to compel the Department of Justice to correct the historical record in the Rosenberg case. Official acknowledgement of the perjuries, forgeries, sentencing illegalities, and the wrongful executions of the Rosenbergs would constitute a step toward restoring the Constitution to the courtroom. It could signal the beginning of the end to the serial human tragedies perpetrated in the name of national security by the Department of Justice. we will need the support of a great number of people to succeed. We take heart from a recent breakthrough we made in bringing the truth to new sections of the public. In February 2011, Z-Man magazine, an ultra-Orthodox Jewish periodical, wrote a 59-page article highly critical of the government's misconduct in the trial. When the Z-Man reporters had concluded their research, they, and an Orthodox rabbi, and an Orthodox cantor, and other participants went to the Rosenberg gravesite where they recited the 23rd Psalm, which Julius Rosenberg had recited on the way to his execution. Said Kaddish, the Jewish prayer for the dead, after which the cantor sang Ka'il Ma'ilei Rachamim, the prayer for Jewish martyrs. We will shortly have a condensed version of the Z-Man article on our website. It is not enough to grieve, to mourn, to regret where history has taken us. History is in our hands if we take it into our hands. Read our informational materials and pass them on. Read the materials on our website and recommend others do so too. Help us get the word out. Help us bring the message to religious, professional, and social groups. Help us when we begin amassing petitions. Help us with funds. Help us with ideas, suggestions, as well as with criticisms. If you want to be part of the resistance to turning America into a police state, a good place to start is by asking for redress for the government's unlawful conduct in the Rosenberg-Sobel trial and for the wrongful executions of the young Rosenberg couple. Thank you. David Allman. Now we will have the eulogy I was unable to give by Robbie Meeropol, the younger son of the Rosenbergs.
Yes, I thought that was a great rendition of Strange Fruit. I've always gotten into arguments with people because I actually like Cassandra Wilson's version better than Billie Holiday's, but I seem to be the only person. No accounting for taste. Anyway, I've not spoken at a memorial meeting for my parents sponsored by the NCRRC in several decades. That's right, several decades. There are a number of reasons for this, but one thing that kept me away was that I felt, perhaps unfairly, that past memorial meetings portrayed my parents as innocent victims. And over time, I came to view their situation as more complicated than that. But more about this later. First, I want to acknowledge another aspect of why I've joined you this evening. The NCRRC has been transformed in the last couple of years. No longer content to commemorate my parents' case, it has revived its original mission. That charge is contained in its name. It is, after all, the National Committee to reopen the Rosenberg case. But what does the word reopen mean today? I hope by the end of this talk to give you a sense of how today's NCRRC will apply that word. Now, I have another more personal goal on the eve of this 58th anniversary of my parents' execution. This talk is, in part, the eulogy I was too young to give when they were killed. I didn't know my parents well, but bits of information contained in the recently released grand jury minutes, Walter and Miriam Schneer's new book, Final Verdict, and Morton Sobel's startling revelations have provided me with a few additional glimpses of their lives. I'd be less than honest if I did not admit that the latest news that Morton Sobel, my father, and two others provided aeronautical information to the Soviet Union in 1948 gives me pause. My parents wrote in their last letter to me and my brother, quote, "Always remember that we were innocent and could not wrong our conscience." Now I have to ask myself, innocent of what? Right-wing cold warriors trumpet Sobel's recent statement as proof that my parents were liars. But it is much more complicated than that. Neither Julius nor Ethel was guilty of the crime for which they faced the executioner. Ethel was not a spy, and Julius was ignorant of the atomic bomb project. They were innocent of stealing the secret of the atomic bomb, and they were fighting for their lives. It would have been extremely difficult at the height of the McCarthy period for them to explain to their children and supporters the distinction between not being guilty of stealing atomic secrets and blanket innocence. Given that, I can understand the course of action they took from a political standpoint. But what are my personal feelings about this today? How could my parents engage in such high-risk activities that could potentially lead to their imprisonment? I was just over a year old, and my brother was 5 in 1948 when my father and Mort copied the secret documents. When I wrote An Execution in the Family in 2002, I thought my father might only have engaged in helping the Soviet Union fight fascism during World War II, and I asked, quote, "How many tens of thousands of American men with young children willingly went to fight during World War II, knowing that they might not survive the conflict? Was my father, whose poor eyesight disqualified him from military service, taking a greater risk by choosing this role in the battle?" Now, I know that he continued to aid the Soviet Union after the end of the war. Now, I disagree with my parents' uncritical support for the USSR and the strategy my father employed to aid it after World War II. It is one thing to work to defeat Hitler or to engage in local struggles where you can see what is happening and have first-hand knowledge of the people and forces involved. But I've learned from painful experience that it is extremely difficult to judge the trustworthiness of foreign governments, not to mention our own. And knowing the terrible toll parents' activism can take on the family, I believe parents should always take their children into account when they engage in perilous activity. I wish to be clear, however. I don't think anyone engaged in what my father did during the 1940s would seriously consider that they might receive the death penalty. In any case, I do not believe it axiomatic that all parents of young children should refrain from risky activity. The Rosenberg Fund for Children, which I founded and direct, helps parents who engage the world and sometimes take dangerous actions even though they have children. Our best chance of building a more humane and just society rests on the activism of ordinary citizens with family concerns, and such activism can't always be risk-free. I question my parents' actions more than